Hi there, Chef Sage Canaday of VO2 Max Productions here with another cooking installment. Today we're going to make my favorite margarita style pizza. And this is a real simple recipe of making your basic crust with yeast and then baking it in the oven on a pizza stone. And if you don't have a pizza stone, you could use a pan, but it's going to take a lot longer and the crust is going to be a little bit different. Now I usually botch the crust anyway, so I'm not sure if it really matters, but here are the ingredients that you need. You should first turn your oven up to about 450 degrees. I also will note that I cracked my pizza stone in half because I've repeatedly put it on very high temperatures over and over again, even when I wasn't baking pizzas. And they have a certain life cycle, so you gotta watch for that. But it still works when I put the two pieces together. So here's the ingredients list. First off, you're gonna need some white flour. And I use white flour. It's not as healthy as wheat flour. It's got a lot of gluten in it. It's obviously, it's unbleached, but and it's organic, but it's my indulgence. Pizza's my big indulgence. I'm actually gonna have some real white flour, and it's kind of the tradition recipe that I grew up on. My parents used to make whole wheat crust pizza, but I like the white flour pizza, so that's what I'm making tonight. You also need some cornmeal, which is good for getting the pizza on and off the peel, the spatula that you put it into the oven on, as well as it acts as ball bearings basically to roll the pizza into the oven, which we'll get to when we're ready to bake it. Then some olive oil for some good old drizzling over the dough, keep it nice and moist, and to add a little flavor maybe to sprinkle on top. You also need some good toppings. As I said, we're making a margarita pizza, so I use a fresh ripe little tomato that I'm going to slice up, as well as some whole basil leaves. You actually get the whole basil leaves in this pack at the store, and I'll wash them off and put them on whole on top of the pizza. Then what would be a pizza without some nice high quality mozzarella cheese? And I used to get more of the raw, real fresh mozzarella that comes in the logs and stuff, but I've been going more, I don't get cheese that often. Again, it's my big indulgence. Sandy and I usually eat non-dairy. I usually don't have real cheese, but on this rare occasion, we're going with this mozzarella. It's got happy cows on it. I know it's non-GMO, organic. The cows, the picture at least on the front with the cow, it looks happy, and it looks like it's allowed to roam about in the green pastures. It kind of reminds me of the cows in Europe where they're roaming about in the mountains, and they look really happy with the big bells swinging around on their neck. But it's a high quality cheese, I think, and it tastes great, so I'm going to use that as a topping as well. You also need some fast acting yeast, as well as some honey or a little bit of sugar. I like to use honey instead of refined sugar to activate the yeast. It gives the yeast something to feed on, as well as a little dash of salt. We'll start off putting it in the bowl, and some hot water. Finally, you'll need some tomato sauce, and you can make your own. I'm too lazy, so I bought Newman's. It's good that he donates, or I guess he's gone now, but the Newman's brand, they donate to charity, so we like that. It's a good veggie mix, good high quality pasta sauce that I like to use, so that's what we're using today. Alright, so to start off here, in a pretty large mixing bowl, I've added the yeast, a little dash of salt, and about a teaspoon, I don't know how much honey that is, maybe too much honey, but here we're going to add in some hot water, about hot water to touch, and I don't even know how much to add in. I'd say probably about a cup, but this is real variable. I usually fill it about that much, and we're going to let this sit for about 5 minutes, let the yeast feed on the sugar from the honey, and let the hot water do its magic before we add in some white flour. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start sprinkling in some flour into the yeast mixture. And I'm going to stir it around with a spoon there until it gets just moistened enough. We don't want it to be liquidy, but we want to start forming a little bit of a dough. But you want to be careful not to add too much flour. So I'm going to get it so it's just thick enough. Keep adding flour until it's just thick enough we could scoop it out with our hands and knead it onto a floured surface. Heavily floured, I may add. Don't want it to stick. It's going to be really sticky and moist. You want to make sure your hands have a lot of flour on them because this gets real sticky. And I probably could have added a little bit of olive oil to this, but it's a real malleable consistency right now, and it's still a little warm from the water. But we're gonna knead this out, and do not judge me on my kneading technique. I don't do this that often. I've never made bread, so I don't really know what I'm doing. But you gotta knead this for like 5 minutes at least. And what we wanna do is actually get it so it changes consistency. It's the process with the gluten and everything. So we're gonna knead it for like 5 minutes and then come back and I'll show you what you wanna look like. Basically, when you poke your finger into it, it needs to be springing back. So that's when you know you're ready. But it's gonna be about 5 minutes, so I'm gonna turn the camera off. All right, so there's our kneaded ball of dough, and he's just a little guy. Right now he hasn't risen up yet, and we're gonna drizzle that with a little bit of olive oil here. So yeah, drizzling that with a little bit of olive oil, and we're gonna put some saran wrap over it and let it sit in a warm place by the oven. Not on the oven, because then it'll start baking, but in a warm place. We'll let it sit for at least a half hour to let the yeast really act. Alright, so I just put the saran wrap loosely on top there. It's just kind of resting and it's in a warm spot. I should also mention that another key ingredient to my pizza recipe is to have Avery beer on hand. IPA is always good, Maharaja, and preferably to start drinking it while you're making the pizza. Kind of helps with the whole process, I think. Alright, so now it's been a while. You can see the dough rose nicely. We'll get ready to that. And I also got all the toppings prepared. Diced up garlic, the basil, the cheese, and the tomatoes, as well as the sauce. Ready to roll out. Alright, so we got the pizza, the dough, these floured surfaces ready for the dough. I got this pizza paddle thingamajig, with a little bit of the coarsely ground corn flour, I guess, cornstarch. Again, it acts as ball bearings to roll the pizza off. And then I have my trusty rolling pin here, as well as another floured surface. And we'll get out a spatula to scoop it into the pizza brick. But first we're gonna knead it out a couple times and roll it out to get a nice flat, fairly thin crust. I don't like super thin, but kind of a medium style crust, and see how that works. Wow, I love this dough. I could just eat it raw all day. So good. So we'll just kind of compress it. It's nice and spongy, nice and elasticy. I'm not going to toss it up in there, so don't brace yourself for that. I'm just going to roll it out. It's going to make quite a bit, pretty big pizza here because I made quite a bit of dough. Try to get it pretty thin before we transfer it to the peel. I think that's what it's called. I'm an amateur, so bear with me here. I always like to add a little Italian seasoning, mainly like oregano on top. I don't know if that's violates any cooking rules, but I like to do that. And then a little bit of olive oil just to drizzle on. That was probably way too much. Alright, now it's time to go in the oven. Alright, so the oven's nice and hot. I had it turned up to about 500 degrees, and make sure there's plenty of flour on the paddle. Let's see if I don't botch this up now. I want to make sure you have a really pretty steep angle with the paddle and that the spatula gets underneath, but here we go. Oh man, I kind of screwed it up a little. That's alright, it's not going to be a perfectly round pizza, but I think it should turn out okay. That one's pretty hot. So a little bit of an oval shaped pizza, but we'll see how it turns out. Let it cook for about 5 minutes. 5 to 8 minutes usually. It cooks really fast. So there it is. Just pulled it out of the oven. Not my best, but we'll see how it tastes.